Hello, and welcome to our Employee Return to Campus Town Hall. I'm Kelly Avance, Chief Communication Officer, and I'm joined today with a number of the great team who have been working on our reopening plans for the upcoming school year. We recognize that we're all kind of on a roller coaster ride together as the COVID conditions in our county and the state of California change, and guidance changes and is revised along the way. And so we thought that holding this town hall for our employees to allow for opportunities for questions to be asked and answered and sharing some information was just one more step in our ongoing process to communicate with each other, to answer questions, and to consider the many elements of returning to school in the work world of our employees right now. So I'm going to let the wonderful group who's on camera with me right now, for those who have not yet turned their video back on, go ahead and do that, and we'll go through some introductions. So I'm going to start with Norm Anderson. Why don't you?
Hi, you got it. It sounds like we're having some technical difficulties here too, Kelly. So we might just check in on Raj and those guys. So
I think that it's actually could be that there's a delay, and so we just were stopped, and people were expecting it to go live right at 3, and it hasn't yet done that. But I'll step away while you're doing your introductions and just confirm.
You got it. I'm Norm Anderson, a Deputy Superintendent, Coach Unified. Thanks, everybody.
Michael Johnson, Associate Superintendent, Administrative Services for Clovis Unified.
Good afternoon, everybody. Barry Jager, Associate Superintendent, Human Resources and Employee Relations. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Corinne Fulmer, Associate Superintendent over School Leadership.
Hey everybody, my name is Robin Castillo and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Instructional Services.
Good afternoon, I'm Tim Chokas from CSEA, the Chapter President.
Michelle, you're muted, Michelle.
Sorry about that. I'm Michelle Fay, the Office Manager at Tarpey, and I'm the Cubs Executive.
Good afternoon, I'm Dwayne Gowdy, Faculty Senate President.
Good afternoon, I'm Amy Kilburn, 8th grade AB teacher and peer counseling teacher at Rayburn and Faculty Senate Vice President.
Hi there, Lisa Brown, 7th grade Clark AB teacher, Faculty Senate Executive Board elected Secretary. There it is.
My name is the proud superintendent here at Clovis Unified. Captain off the ship, so and honestly, I want to be on any other ship, any other I just want to remind everybody to turn their mute button on so that we don't have any conflicting sounds. But I just want to just launch our first of all by welcoming and it's sad that
I'm going to quickly interrupt Emer only because we're having some sound difficulties and I don't want her to continue speaking while everyone's eagerly trying to hear what she says. This is the joy of working through the virtual world right now. So give us 1 second as we maybe switch a microphone real quick, but I do appreciate everybody's patience as we work to address the sound difficulty.
Maybe my computer.
I'm going to use this opportunity to just remind any of our employees who are watching that yesterday you received an option to submit comments and questions. And to this point, we've had 250 comments and questions posed to us that are many of the answers incorporated into the presentation that you're going to see today, recognizing that we know we can't get to all of them, but we will be updating frequently asked questions and getting those back on our website and through employee emails and updates. So this is really an ongoing conversation, and we want to make sure that if during the meeting itself, once the technical difficulties are worked out, that you have questions that you want to pose in the comment portion of the YouTube channel, that's also available to you. So throughout the next hour or so, just know that those are the two avenues by which you can pose questions to us, and then they're fed back into the Zoom environment. So at the end of this, we'll be able to field some of those questions as well, in addition to the presentation components. So it looks like we're going to give sound another try with Dr. O'Farrell, and we'll go from there.
Well, can you all hear me now? I think I've been able to resolve my technical difficulties. What I was saying was that I was referring to myself as the captain of the ship, and I was saying, you know, I wouldn't want to be on any other ship with any other team than the Clovis Unified team. And what a journey we've been on, going all the way back to March 13th, when our governing board made the very challenging decision to close our schools. And, you know, we embarked on a journey that took us through a whole spring semester of distance learning. And I just remember just being so proud of our whole team. And even though everybody was very challenged in their home life with their own families and their own children, and just all the challenges and worries and anxieties that everybody had, and worrying about being able to, you know, provide, whether our stores were going to have provisions in them, just if you all take your minds back to then. But even with all of that, our teachers continue to teach our kids, our campus catering folks and our bus drivers got out there every day and fed our kids thousands of meals every day. Our classified and clerical folks kept the business and the operations of the district going. We didn't miss a beat, guys. And, you know, our plant ops were out there just making sure that our facilities were kept as beautiful and as clean and as sanitized as possible. So, you know, the journey started out with us all pulling together, and never, maybe in the history of our 60 years in Clovis Unified, have we drawn on that tenet of teamwork and trust as much as we did as we moved through that journey. And, you know, going on to think about every decision that we make, we anchored our decisions in our core values, in providing, you know, a high quality education and high quality instruction to all of our students in spite of all the challenges, whether it was trying to deliver speech services to special students with special needs, or trying to teach a choir how to sing virtually. You know, we just found a way to make it happen. And, you know, we never lost sight of our aim number one, to maximize achievement for all our students in mind, body, and spirit. And, you know, never before have we had to think and prioritize safety as much as we do right now, and have been during this journey. And really every decision that we've made in this journey has had to have safety as a top priority for us. And, you know, as we moved into the summer and we thought about a process for reopening our schools, we started thinking about, okay, what are the voices that we need to have in this process? The voices of our staff, the voices of our teachers, and the voices of our community. And so we started with staff surveys. If you recall, we had our annual spring update. Again, it looked a little different. But following that spring update, we got pages and pages of feedback, which was so helpful from our staff. And, you know, we were able then to put together a task force, a return to campus task force. So I'll talk about that in a moment, what that task force looks like. But we also wanted to listen to the voices of our parents and our student committees. And so if you recall, back in June, we had a similar virtual town hall to today's meeting. And then we started launching surveys. We launched 2 surveys to our parents, and then we also conducted in-person phone calls to all of our teachers. And the last survey that we got from our parents had about we had over 25,000 families respond. And just looking at that feedback, we had, you know, a majority of our teachers and our parents were just begging, please get us back in our classrooms, get our kids back. And, you know, there were, I think, 800 pages of comments from our parents asking us to do everything we could to please consider getting our kids back in the classrooms. And we had teachers saying, we're ready to go in if we can provide that safety. And of course, you know, we've been in daily and weekly contact. Some of Jeannie Prandini and her staff have been in daily contact with the Department of Public Health, and we've been in weekly contact. Myself and Norm have been on a phone call every Thursday since May with the Department of Public Health on the call. And we've just prioritized every decision within the guidelines of the Department of Public Health. And if you recall, you know, we had our graduations, those plans were all approved by the Department of Public Health. So was our return to play for our kids, you know, so we've just stayed very connected with them. And our group of our reopening committee or our task force consisted of 88 members of employees representing all of our employee groups and departments. And I really want to give a shout out to, you know, CSEA. Tim Chokas has been there linking arm in arm with us and his group the whole way. You know, Michelle Fay, and I need to also shout out to Jeanette Garcia, because she was there for those 2 ladies are transitioning positions, but you've been there representing our, you know, classified unit business senate, and then our faculty senate with, you know, Dwayne and Amy Kilburn and Lisa Brown. We've just been in weekly and sometimes daily contact all summer, just making sure that the voices of our employees are participating in all those subgroups. And later on this presentation, you know, we'll show you all those different, I should say, subcommittees that were launched, you know, just looking at every aspect of reopening a district, whether it was from transportation to special education to campus catering to safety to nursing to instructional models. Just it said there's so many complexities attached to it. And so since May, that group has been working. And as I mentioned, you know, I said it the other day, the Department of Public Health has been very clear on their authority with respect to school districts. And so it's never been a desire of ours to deviate in any way from their guidelines, because quite frankly, the Department of Public Health has the authority to shut us down. So they made it very clear, and they came out to a classroom and studied, you know, what it would look like. They said you would have to maintain 6 feet of physical distancing, which would mean obviously that we would only probably be able to fit at the very most 18 students in a classroom. We would have to have the capability for them to conduct contact tracing, mandatory face coverings and other PPE such as plexiglass and things like that were also stipulated. And they gave us very clear guidelines on what cleaning and sanitizing would look like. And so, you know, putting all that in first, because we knew that Department of Public Health would guide us well and make sure that the safety of our employees, the safety of our students, just the safety of everybody concerned was a priority. And then also that return to campus task force knew that any outcomes of their discussions with the ever-evolving situation that we're in and the uncertainties, that we would have to be prepared to pivot at any time. And I just want to recognize them for that, because it's very challenging for all of us to constantly be pivoting, because we in Clovis Unified are you know, we're pretty well known for being organized, and we're planners, and we like to have things planned out and done so that we can execute carefully and expeditiously, and just to have to constantly change course and then trying to make sure we're communicating that has been an ongoing challenge for all of us as we've navigated this summer. But just moving on to the next slide and looking at, what were the non-negotiables arising out of that, those discussions. Safety, as I said, has always been our number one priority. And we knew that whatever plan we came up with, whatever scenario, that the safety of our staff and our students was, we wouldn't be able to move outside the gate unless that was solidified first. So that's been our foundational tenet all along. We felt we needed options because the feedback we were receiving from our staff and our community led us in the direction of, these impassioned pleas to please offer some face-to-face, some form of face-to-face instruction from our teachers and our families, but also hearing from our teachers, from another side of the house, our teachers and our families saying, whatever, for a variety of reasons, my health and the concerns of my family will necessitate me needing to have another option other than face-to-face. And then the ability, like I said, to adjust. So the outcomes that we had from those conversations and what we were able then to bring to our governing board last Wednesday night were a plan that included all the health and safety guidance and very much aligned, as I said, to the Department of Public Health. Choices for our employees and our parents. Our goal was that our teachers who had health issues and that fit within, those guidelines that we've been talking about, that put our teachers in the categories that are more at risk, that we wanted to be able to offer an opportunity for those teachers to be able to teach via online, and then also be able to simultaneously meet the needs of those in our community who, for similar reasons, felt that their children could not be in a face-to-face environment. And so choice was a big part of those two plans. We presented two models to the governing board, and both models involved the same level of safety along with a choice for our families and our teachers. And then obviously the ability to adjust. I like to use that rather than the word pivot, because as I've said recently, it's my least favorite word these days. But just the ability to adjust, and of course adjusting in itself is a challenge. But we know, even moving forward right now, we know that we have to be agile. We have the word agility in our strategic plan, and we've often, as we've taken deep dives into our strategic plan, we've said, do we really need that word? And we even did that this year, and we decided to keep it. And I've come to realize that agility is very important for us as an organization. And before I turn it over to Barry, I just wanted to say that obviously on Wednesday night, our governing board opted for the 5-day week option, where we would have the elevated safety precautions in place, reduced class size, and then the option also for our families and teachers to avail of online. That vote by our board became history on Friday, when Governor Newsom came out with, he has come out pretty much most weeks this summer, he's come out with updates. I got wind on Thursday when I was talking to our faculty senate that he was going to be coming out on Friday again, as he's done, as I said, every week, but that he was going to have maybe some criteria. And so we were very poised on Friday to hear what that was going to look like, because quite frankly, I just tell you, we've been wanting that criteria for a long time. We've been asking for guidance, and every week we've come off of those governor presentations without that guidance, and so we've had to really talk about what we ourselves, try and figure it out ourselves. But what I'll say before I turn it over is, you know, as I said, putting our people first. We've always talked about people, not programs. And, you know, this has been one of the toughest situations. I know for me personally, I've had to dig deep every morning before I get out of bed, because just the anxiety and the worry about our kids, and the concerns for our parents, the concerns for all of our staff, our teachers, our clerical workers, our bus drivers, our custodial staff, like just the amount of work that all of this is generating for all of our team. It's just, it weighs on all of us, and trying to figure out how to navigate it and do it in such a way. All we can say is, I just want to thank you all for just being there, linking arms as we've navigated it this summer. And here we are again with, we're pivoting. And my team is going to take you through what we're going to do now that we're headed in this direction. And, you know, we've got some steps in place, and I would be the first to tell you we don't have an answer to every question. But I do know that our goal is to take care of everybody that we're responsible for. And today our focus is on our employees. So much of our conversation is going to be about what we can do to take care of our Clovis Unified employees as we simultaneously navigate trying to teach our kids via online. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Barry Jager, who will take us through our next steps.
Thank you, Dr. O'Farrell, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us in our town hall. We are well aware that the most important things that continue to make our district, you know, hum like it does is our certificated and classified staff. We are all in this for our students. We are all in this to make sure that we are taking care of one another, being very transparent through this process. And the one thing that is consistent with this process, it is ever changing. We are aware of what we had planned for the 16th was changed on, you know, Friday the 18th. And so as we continue to move forward, our goal is to keep those topics that Dr. O'Farrell was talking about uberly important and at the utmost of the prioritization of what goes on. And so as it's stated in front of you, you know, we were aware back in March that there was a shelter in place and put us into a tailspin to be very reactive, to make sure that we kept our students connected to school, kept our parents informed, and worked with our certificated and classified employees to be, you know, in a place where we could continue to do our work. And our work was to keep our students educated, our campuses looking as sharp as they do, the purchasing department ordering the PPE necessary to move forward. And as we continued, we saw that the county and our state continue to adjust, and that shelter in place was lifted, and we phased a reopening of the district office complex. And that was done with a tremendous amount of insight from so many people, as Dr. O'Farrell alluded to, from our employee groups, sharing with us what concerns were out there, what messages needed to be shared, and how we could really put together a plan that really emphasized all of the guidelines that were shared with us from the Department of Public Health. And that was something that we have continued to use, was the guidelines from the Department of Public Health, the CDC, on how we prepared to meet the safety needs of everybody. You know, those guidelines are laid out, and we continue to not compromise those with the face coverings, the social distancing, large group gatherings, the daily monitoring that is placed in front of every one of our buildings. We will not compromise those guidelines as we continue to make sure that we adapt and adjust. And so as it states, we were also moving forward with, as Dr. O'Farrell shared, the plan to open a 2021 school year. And then we adjusted again on the Friday with the message from the governor. And that was, again, a quick, abrupt change, because we're aware that changes are happening to us on a regular. And then the other messages that were coming were the mandates, the SB 98 Senate bill that was in front of us. And that is the Senate bill that is setting the parameters for school reopening. And again, I'll just give you just a brief overview of just some of the items that are shared within that Senate bill. And that's what distant learning is defined as, how and what we will continue to do for our special education population, what instructional days and instructional minutes are set in front of us in regards to how we will work with our classified and certificated employees, and so on. But that Senate Bill 98 was set in place and allowed us to, take a look at that particular document that would shape our message moving forward as well, so that we were in compliance and moving forward with what was shared with us as Senate 98 came forward, Senate Bill 98 came forward. Also, no shelter in place, and messages. And then the Fresno County was placed on the state's watch list, which will impact some of the information that I will share with you as we move forward. So as we move to the next slide, I will share that our work that was in front of us and had been in front of us based on the reopening committee, messages from our employee groups, et cetera, was to develop, a return to school health and safety plan. And you will see that this particular document is on our website. We have been developing this with so much impact from our subcommittees and our reopening committee and the work that we have done to receive the feedback. We're working with the Fresno County Department of Health, working with CDC, working with Fresno County. We are gathering as much information as possible as we are developing a clear-cut message that really frames around an overarching theme that our employees have been talking to us about, and that is health and safety. And that is something that we will not compromise. We understand the well-being of our employees is at the forefront of every decision, every single decision. We must continue to make sure that that is shared, that is reinforced, and this document that is online on our website is available to us. As you click through, you will see a particular section that I will refer to. That next particular slide is that of personnel procedures. And as it goes through, what it will do is it will lay out what we have in place to clearly communicate and be consistent. That is a key word through this process, is be consistent with our message and also flexible. I say that with an asterisk because it's changing, but we are staying consistent with following the guidelines. And I don't know if you can see my hand, but following the guidelines from the Department of Public Health and the CDC. We must make sure that we stay in compliance and we do not compromise. And so as we go through the personnel procedures, you'll be able to click through each of these particular sections online as you so choose, and so will our community. The other area I'll share with you is we have been working in human resources to develop an annual acknowledgement that every single employee will sign off, but will also have a PDF copy that will be new to our annual acknowledgement process this year. We want to reinforce what our expectations are for every employee, certificated and classified, the safety expectations, the daily processes, and all of the care and concern that will come into play. It will not be added to a Stoll bill. It will not be a supplemental document to some particular item that's already there. We in HR and throughout the district and through the subcommittees will be processing the document that will come forward, so our employee groups get their eyes on it prior to it coming to us the week of August 10th. We are that concerned and prioritizing the well-being of our employees, that this will be a standalone document added to our annual acknowledgements that will cover a variety of personnel expectations. One of which is this particular document that is also online, and it is our what happens when a student or staff member becomes sick, because what we know is it's not if, it's when. We know that this particular pandemic is real. We know it, we understand it. And so I won't go through all of it, but I will tell you that these particular scenarios will walk you through situations and how we will work with our nursing services. Thank you, Jeannie Prandini and our nursing team. You are absolutely amazing. We know that at the start of the school year, our nursing team will be trained as tracers. They will be a resource to all of us at site level and department level to be available, along with partnering with human resources and our benefits team. We have worked behind the scenes and in front of the scenes to be involved at the table and to make sure that we are leaving no stone unturned to make sure that information is clearly articulated. And just quickly, person A person who has tested positive for COVID-19 and is confirmed with lab results, what do we do? How do we process the time frame involved, etc. Moving forward, you'll see person B, person C, person D. Ultimately, we know that there are situations that could ultimately be E, all of the above. And we know that that will help us work with nursing services, and that will allow us to work with human resources, because there are resources available, and there are also actions that we will take to make sure that we inform correctly and guide appropriately as we work with each individual situation. And we are learning, and we are putting systems in place over the summer with those 1,500 plus employees that have been working at the DO complex, as we did a phased back into work over the last 5-ish weeks. And we will allow for our systems to even be more fine-tuned as we get to August 10th and work with all of our employees to make sure that they are highly informed in regards to the processes in place. And so as we continue, outcomes of what we want to do with our employees is, I'll take a step back before we get into this particular document or this particular slide, but is the leave options. There are leave options available, and we want to make sure that every employee is well aware of the leaves that are available if and when a situation occurs in regards to a hardship or a medical condition, and that is the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Family First Act, FFCRA, you've seen many terms, but those are the terms that are those are the leave availability that is for our employees to take up to 2 weeks or 80 hours of time without any penalty to their salary or any docking of time that they have available to them to help support a medical situation or a childcare situation that will support them in regards to COVID-19 illness or quarantine, or any employee caring for another person who has COVID-19, or available for childcare purposes. And again, we have forms available online through the district website under human resources that will allow for this particular form to be filled out and for you to process with human resources. Also available is a system that we've had in place, and that's Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, that is available that would allow our employees to process accordingly and work through your HR specialist and through benefits to make sure that our employees are well taken care of in regards to leaves. And we, again, want to make sure that our employees know that it's available. One, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is a law that was put in place April 1st and will continue through 12/31 of 2020. So as you have questions, our employees have questions, we will guide you through that through human resources. Again, I'll reinforce that those particular leave forms are online, available for our employees. It does not, Family First Coronavirus Response Act does not require a doctor's note, nor does it require any formal document from a daycare provider if it's for childcare purposes. And so we will not require that, nor will we compromise the integrity of that law. We want our employees to know that it's available. The other particular items that we will make sure that we are available is that we will, in human resources and throughout the district, we will be a resource to everyone. If questions are there and situations arise, we want to be available to you. We want to be hands-on. We want to be available. I take that back. We want to be phone on or email on. We want to eliminate the face-to-face. We want to protect the integrity of the process, but ultimately we want you making sure that you are available to, and we are available to human resources. This particular document, remote work options, as I shared earlier, when a shelter in place was put in March, we did have situations where individuals were working remotely, at the school sites, throughout the district office complex, and throughout the district, and working to make sure that individuals remained in a healthy environment were taken care of. As we're looking at situations where Fresno County has been placed on a watch list, we continually want to take care of our employees. And so as we're taking every measure and every guideline shared to us from the CDC, there are essential duties of your position that can be performed remotely. We will work to support what the CDC is sharing with us. Right now, there is no statewide mandated remote work. There is suggested opportunities for those that can work remotely. We are going to honor what the CDC is saying, and that does suggest that those 65 or older. And then the other is those with a health condition that is identified by the CDC will be supported in working remotely if that is an option that is available to them. What we will also be doing is developing a protocol that will be a leave form that will be available online. As you will see, this is going to go in effect on July 22, which is tomorrow. We have seen what has been shared with us from the CDC as suggested. We are going to support that. We feel that this is yet another opportunity to support our employees as we're listening to the feedback and options that are made available. We will continue to listen and be available to the resources that are shared to us. And again, this is our way of supporting our certificated and classified employees moving forward that are identified by the CDC guidelines. And again, as they are not mandating, but suggesting, we are aware that this is a way to support our employees that are identified as older adults, which is 65 or older, or people of any age who have a serious underlying medical condition. And those particular guidelines and forms would then be made available to our employees to access through human resources. And so from there, again, I just can't thank you enough for the input that we have shared. And I do believe it's now my opportunity to turn it over to Michael Johnston.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate that. And obviously, as we look at staff returning, I appreciate everything our staff has done to help support us in what we're doing and moving forward with getting back to education of kids and continuing the education of kids as we come to the new school year. As we do that, obviously, one of the big things for us is to make sure we have provide you with the safety equipment and needs and PPE supplies that you need at your school site. You can see here that we've given you some information that what the district has been able to acquire or purchase through our purchasing department and our teams, facility services and business services, and our warehouse team of taking deliveries. They've done an amazing job at getting what we need to get for our school district to ensure the safety of our employees, of our students as we move forward in the process. So you can see here that we've got over 96,000 cloth face masks, over 200,000 disposable face masks, total of over 300,000 face coverings. As you look at those face masks and disposable face masks, that's 3 times more than a school district that we heard about down south. It's very comparable to our size. They've only got about 100,000 in those supplies. We've got over 300,000 in supplies for that. We've got 50,000 face shields. We've got gloves. We're doing everything we can to supply the needs that we have. We also have signage that will be available to our school sites to get out to our school sites and provide for the social distancing and the needs that'll need to happen out there, and continue that message, and always putting in the front of everybody's mind about where they need to be and social distancing with each other to help protect everybody at the sites and departments. As we look at the supplies that we do have, an email went out last week from Nick Mel, who provided the information about how much each school site will get. Every site leadership received that email last week. Those deliveries will be going out to school sites first part of August here, so should be receiving all the deliveries of what you will get for a school site. And that email that Nick sent out showed exactly what elementary and intermediate, high school, and departments would be getting for PPE supplies. So I think that's going to be huge for us as we move forward and to continue to create that environment that we're doing everything we can to help protect our employees. And that doesn't happen by fault. That happens with the work of a lot of people pulling together to get all those supplies in place. And I thank them again for all their work in making that happen. As we look at moving forward, so next slide. Thank you. As we look at moving forward, obviously one of the things too is looking at this threshold, the monitoring list, the watch list the state has identified for us, and the reality of as you can see here, this is data right off of the California Department of Public Health, and actually you can go onto their website and see exactly this information on a daily basis. This data we're just showing Fresno, but this data is updated for all counties in the state of California. And you can see here's Fresno's data as far as those areas of they're watching to make sure we can get off the watch list. And if you see down below, there's really, as you look at this, there's 3 areas: elevated disease transmission, increasing hospitalization, and limited hospitalization capacity. So you can see that the last column there, both those areas are checked. We're okay on limited hospital capacity. We have no issues there right now, according to the state's definition of that. As you can see, under elevated disease transmission, they have numbers in there for us. That means that we're over the rate that they have applied. So for elevated disease transmission, one of those scenarios is looking at, we can't have a case rate over 100 cases per 100,000 populations over a 14-day period. So obviously, as you look at that, you can see we're at 242 cases over that most recent 14-day period. There's actually a 3-day lag in that as you look at the data, but we're at 242 cases. And I suspect that looking at our data that we know and have seen recently that they haven't gotten updated on the website, that number will tick up slightly as we look at moving forward here. And obviously, what we're going to be continuing to look for, and I think this is an early sign for all of our staff and employees, is look at those daily cases, because if those daily cases are creeping up by more than 100 cases per day of positive tests, then the reality is, you know, until we get below 100 or at 100, we're not going to be able to really see ourselves coming back to any sort of reopening of the physical school sites for education of students and bringing them on campus, because we've got to get below that 100 number. So that's an important number to pay attention to as we look at what's happening. And then obviously too, the increasing hospitalization rate cannot be greater than 10%. You can see right now we're at 12.6%. I believe the actual data that's coming out soon here that will show that that's ticked down a little bit. So that's actually decreased a little bit for us. It'll be a positive sign for us. One of the other things that's out there too is the reality that you're going to hear a little bit about. There's a possibility of a waiver out there for school districts to waive the requirement that being on the watch list and be able to come back for education. Those are elementary school districts, and actually that's in the control of the county health officers with the approval and consultation with the California Department of Public Health to allow for that to happen. The reality, that's not, you know, in a district our size, we're not going to be able to see that, you know, but there are districts in our county, and maybe one, for example, would be like Big Creek Elementary School, very isolated, very, you know, small school site that probably could easily qualify to be coming back to school physically with students if they so wish. But reality, we don't intend to apply for a waiver, and we don't even think we'd be in the reality of being able to be accepted for a waiver, being the size of our school district and the numbers that we have right now as we look at it. So, you know, we'll continue to monitor that data, see where we're at, and make sure we're continuing to pay attention to that. So I think the theme here is let's see less than 100 cases per day, and then we can have conversations about bringing our staff back and not only our staff, but I should say our kids back to the school sites for education. With that, I'll sign it over to Corinne, who will lead us in the next conversation, online instruction.
Yes, thank you, Michael. So as you've heard, our current status of our county is dictating and leading us to have an online instructional model. I first want to start off by saying thank you to that task force that was mentioned earlier. There was an endless amount of time spent in planning for all three possibilities. And so a lot of the work that they have done is leading to some of the information that I'll be sharing today. But with that online instruction, some details about that is that this will be live, real-time, daily instruction. So our teachers will be connecting with kids daily. They will be utilizing Zoom for that delivery. Google Classroom, Clever will have resources and supplemental resources for our students. It is through some of the guidance we're receiving, daily attendance will be taken by teachers. And that's an accountability for our students. To make sure that we're getting them engaged into the instruction and time that our staff is pouring into delivering that new instruction in a daily model. I think one of the questions that has been prevalent is that it will not look like spring. There will be an established set schedule for instruction during the school day to help give kids some structure, because at some point, you know, we look that we will be returning students to an on-site model, and this will help give some of that structure. It also eliminates some of the issues that occurred in spring with at the secondary level with courses, scheduling, instruction during the same block of time. And so I'll go over what some frames might look like. There's been a lot of questions too, and I appreciate that our task force has really worked that this will be a teacher-driven curriculum that's aligned to standards. And like I said, delivered through that Zoom medium. We will be offering a long-term online option This will be for students in grades 7 through 12, and that's really going to be for those who are opting to have a flexible schedule and foresee that for their family purposes, students will be exercising a long-term online instructional plan. So with this, our committee has been working diligently on, which will be information will come out later, on some student and teacher guidelines of what to expect during this online instructional model. To help get our minds wrapped around what does that set schedule possibly look like, I'm going to share some very draft versions here of what a schedule might look like. This is an example of an elementary. You'll notice there are no times established yet. That's because these are very much draft models, and we want to process this, as we know that sites and different levels of instruction require some different things. But essentially, their class meeting would happen. There'd be an instructional block 1 where content could be covered. Teachers would be allowed to give breaks during those times as needed. Independent work could be assigned. There would be established lunch breaks for staff to have. They need to have that break away and have a lunch, and then come back for an instructional block 2. And like I said, there's no times, we're still processing that information, but this is a draft version of what elementary could look like. And then at the secondary level, this is another draft version. Our committee is still having a lot of conversations around what a Monday might look like. So for example, a Monday might, there's conversations about having either these block periods be rotating, or possibly having a Monday where we see every period to set the week, and then have block the remainder of the week. But you can see we have odd, even days. This will allow a little bit more time, which we heard was needed for online instruction with some of our lab classes, CTEs, and really all of our courses, to get to some in-depth instruction and cover that new content that's required. So we're still working through some of the details of this, but this does provide at least a mental frame of what that means by kind of having a daily structure for students. Breaks and lunches would also be established in these schedules to ensure that teachers and students have a little bit of that time away from a Zoom for fatigue purposes and needing to get up and move. As we talk about these models with online, it's really important to recognize that this is going to require us to address some device issues and connectivity. And so in this model, every student must have a device and connectivity availability. Our district is gathering information in the annual information update about whichever model was originally asked. Obviously, everyone's going online, but we did ask the question about, do they need a device or a hotspot? We're going to work to figure out a process for checking out textbooks and technology, because like I said, this is going to be teacher-driven curriculum. And so if the textbooks are what our math classes or benchmark for elementary ELA is using, or collections, that we'll find a process to get that material to students. We do have more hotspots on order, as we recognize that we did not have necessarily all students online. There was packet options in the spring, and so we are preparing for the increased needs. I know there's been a lot of questions about, do we have enough devices? We've been able to work through some things with the Chromebooks, and so we will have close to 30,000 devices that we can help distribute, as we recognize that with a set schedule, if a family has 4 students, that they may not have 4 devices in their home. They might have 1, and we'll need to help accommodate those other needs. Some of the other questions that we are encountering too, and I want to acknowledge because these are very important, are some employee support needs. We recognize that our teachers and staff need assistance with their own children during this online learning model. So we are exploring options of Campus Club and what can that look like. We're really examining what's the feasibility, what spaces could be used, devices, because we would need to help those students be able to log on themselves while their parent or is working. And so we are working through those options with more details to come on how we can address that. We also recognize that this has been a very stressful time for all of our staffs. In general, our lives have changed. Our students and our children are dealing with the stress of this, as well as each employee, as we are constantly facing different information and changes and the stress that causes. And so I do want to remind everyone that through reaching out to your administrator or through HR, that we do have social emotional supports to help with our staff members. And I encourage those to access that because we are in stressful times. This is unprecedented. And the well-being of our employees is paramount to everything that we do. Additionally, some questions have been co-curricular because we started with some summer programs in a controlled setting to bring kids back. We also did this with Campus Club. And we learned yesterday that CIF has made some changes to what the high school schedule will look like. And so naturally the question is, and it will be for parents too, is what's that going to look like for intermediate and what is that going to look like for elementary? And so we're working through plans at those levels, and Steve France has done a great job working with athletic directors, and he'll work through the EAC and area superintendents and site administration to get that communication out on what those plans will look like. That also means too, we need to consider VAPA. We are working diligently to look at what steps will need to be taken with regards to drama productions and the facilities that we share. We know that band and choir carry extra risks with some of the singing that we've learned in terms of spread. And so we're working through the details of those things. And I just want to acknowledge that those are areas that we still are exploring to get a finalized information out to our staffs. We're also exploring clubs because we also need to still see if there's ways that we can connect with our kids. While we're going to be online, we know that connectivity is going to be more important than ever. And so these are just some of the things that we've heard with regards to employee support that we are still working through the details, but they are on our radar and our teams are working very hard to get details out very soon. With that said, I'm going to pass this on to the next big part of what is online instruction, which will be the professional development. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Castillo.
Thank you, Corinne. Lots of questions about professional development and curriculum and what that's going to look like. And I want to thank the reopening committee, faculty senate for sending a lot of questions and comments. Also, the teachers who have personally reached out to me, I've talked to a few by telephone and by email. That's really helpful in planning what we do. So it'll be something meaningful to you and what you need to be successful. So I continue to encourage people, if you have things that you think would be helpful for me to know in some of this planning that I'm going to talk about, please feel free to contact me. That is very helpful. So as far as professional development, I want to thank Dr. Para and her team over at Curriculum and Instruction. They've been working really hard to get things ready and available. So professional development that's going to be available will focus on using technology to deliver direct instruction. The curriculum will be what teachers are used to delivering in the classroom in the normal setting, but how that's delivered and the tools that you use are going to be what's changing. And so the professional development will be centered around that. We realize that this is a hard thing to adjust to, and it's going to take some time and it's going to take some practice. And so we're going to have different trainings available. And some of the training will start as early as the week of August 3rd, and that will certainly be optional because we know that is before teachers report back to work. But for people who are interested in getting an early start, we'll have some training available. You'll get an invitation and a schedule through email that will go out next week, and people are asked to register through Eventbrite. We will also be able to offer some small stipends to teachers who would like to take those early training options. So look for that coming your way. We will also have several training opportunities during Institute Week when teachers report back the week of August 10th. So our teachers on special assignment are working really hard to create some instructional videos that would cover different topics such as Google Classroom, the use of Zoom and all of the instructional features that come with that, Loom for videos, Illuminate for assessment, and live proctoring. So all of those will be available through videos. So if a team or a PLC would like to work with a video as they're doing some of their planning and training, that those would be available. So the team is working really hard to get those ready. I know we've had a lot of issues with test security and students turning in things that are their own work and not something that they found online. So we've been looking for ways to proctor testing and things like that. There are some challenges that come along with that because of some of our state privacy issues. So such as programs that the colleges use that have a camera on students as they're taking assessments, those would not be available to us, but we are looking at what are the ways that we can help with the issues that teachers are concerned with, and what's the best product that we can find that will do what we want it to do, but also take those privacy issues into consideration. I really want to thank our summer school teachers who have worked really hard with online instruction, because they have really provided insight to how some of this online instruction works, the challenges, the things that work well and don't work well. Curriculum instruction has been in constant contact with them to get feedback on how to make things better. And so a lot of those things will be enveloped into the training to help our teachers. As far as resources, teachers will utilize your current textbook for instruction. So we will have students that need to come pick up classrooms from the school site. Also through Clever, a lot of our textbooks have additional online resources that will be available. So teachers will be able to use those as well. And we will continue to provide supplemental resource lists. CNI was really good about sending out emails with links and resources that went with textbooks and things that you want to create. Also some list of unit plans that go along with some of our things. So more to come on that, but we understand all those things are important. Teachers want to get their hands on resources. They want training to be able to do these things. And so all of these things are in the work and moving forward. Can move to the next slide. For special education, this is a big topic. We've had a great reopening committee that's been very helpful, bringing up questions and concerns, a lot of legalities that come along with special education and making sure we're appropriately serving our students. So a big thank you to Teresa Pafford and Carrie Carter and everyone on the team who's been working really hard on that. The teachers and staff will be working with students online. Following the governor's mandate that came out on Friday. We do have a lot of questions being asked, and this both from regular education and special education, about is there a way to meet with students one-on-one in person, either individually or small groups to work on assessments. We are seeking more information on that, and so we're working on those questions, just so you know. A lot of things that go along with special education are very specific questions. So one of the things that we're planning is to have an additional town hall for special education staff and parents next week. So that way we can get more on the ins and outs and the questions that go along with that. And we'll have a way for you to send in questions that you have specific, so we can tailor that to answer as many of the questions as we can as soon as possible. Also, for those that live in the 504 world, Wendy Carcevar just sent out an email letting all of the coordinators know that there will be a training the week of August 10th. So that way you will get additional information on how this is going to work, because we understand there will be challenges coming along with that as well. So more information to come. We're working on it. There is also a special education tab on the reopening document that was prefaced earlier. So there's also some additional information there. So our next slide is on child development and campus club. And a big shout out to our campus club. They're working hard this summer. They've got a pilot program going. Thank you for Janet Samuelian and her whole team. I don't know if you saw the video that was on the news showcasing the good work. Students were socially distanced, 10 in a room, all of the safety protocols. So that's been really helpful for us to see how that's gone. We're working on a model of what we can do for the fall. So we're doing some hard work and planning on that, and hopefully we'll have more details to come. Again, as we learned of adjustments on Friday, it kind of has a new set of challenges that we're looking at, but definitely know that people are working on that. The same with our child development programs, such as preschool. I know Janet and Dr. Paro were working on that just today. So more information to come on that. These are all essential, important programs for how we run, and we want to make sure that we can do them in a safe manner that's supportive. And I know a lot of the employees will have questions, and as we work on that, we'll make sure to get that out. For student social emotional supports, our school site personnel will continue to support students as they always have. And so just to name a few, it's not an exhaustive list, but we'll have our school psychologists, our 7-12 mental health specialists, our transition teams, all of those personnel continuing to work hard with our students and making those connections. Those daily interactions with teachers and staff that happen on a day-to-day basis, we'll still be able to do referrals through the teacher, through the students themselves, and through parents. But those connections will be so important to really monitoring how our students are doing and how we can best support them. Thank you to David Weber, John Logan, Chris Lax. They've created a wonderful graphic that you can see on the CUSD.com that has the social emotional supports. I know they've also sent those out via email, and we'll also want school sites to look at those so you'll be able to communicate with your own families of those supports that fit with your particular level and your school site, because that will vary a little bit from elementary to secondary and school site to school site, depending on what you're working on and what you're implementing at your school site. Also a big shout out to Jeannie Prandini and the nurses, because they're also a big support in this area, and also as with the health and wellness that we're working on. And so there's a lot of information coming with that. And when we look at reopening and when students do come back, they're really looking at what does it need to look like for students and staff, what will be the protocols for making sure that their health checks in the morning, things that'll be done at home by parents. And so that is very helpful and very appreciated. So again, we'll continue to work on that and communicate it out as we have that information. So that's sort of what I have from this area. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson about next steps.
All right, thank you, Robin. First off, thank you everybody for their patience. I know this has been a long Zoom, but maybe we can all take a deep breath and say this all just stinks. There's not another way around it. And as much hard work as we're talking about people are putting into, there's still a lot of work we realize that needs to be done. But hopefully, at least by participating in this, you do see the work and some of the plans that are in place, and a little bit of work that still needs to be tweaked on some of the schedules. But once we have all that planned, we know. We just this Zoom was also an invitation that was sent out to 6,000 people. So realize that maybe some departments were looking at some different information. As Robin said, special ed's going to have their own special Zoom. We're going to do some other Zooms with Faculty Senate. Thank you to Dwayne and his team for that later this week. So we can get to some more specifics, but trying to do a Zoom like this, we're just trying to make sure we connect with people and make sure we understand that there's still work to be done, but we're a lot further than where we were, not exactly where we want to be just yet. And before I hit the points on the slide, I just hope remember that people are working extremely hard to get this right. Every district's doing this, and every district has a different right, and we're trying to find the right for Clovis Unified staff, for students, and for the parents. This district is a family, and it's tough for our family to go through this. There's no doubt about it. It's been my family since I was a student in this district, and it's all I've known. And I just want to say thank you to the family and friends we have that are working. They're trying to help us. They're asking good questions, and they're trying to help us solve this and be part of the solution. And also thank you to my family and friends who texted me in the last 30 minutes suggesting that I not have a window behind me because when I'm on Zoom, it produces unflattering shadows. We all need family and friends to do that. Thank you very much. But our return to school campus plan had all of the guidelines. I saw a comment and mandates that the Fresno County Department of Health was requiring. When we presented those plans to the board on Wednesday evening, all of those plans were conducive with what the Fresno County Department of Public Health was requiring schools to return. And this was true for a few other districts that were also looking at the same model who had already decided it, or were looking at it within our county and within the state as well too. So They told us you can't bring students back unless you can do these things, 6-foot distancing, all the things we've already talked about. So I won't rehash those, but yes, that's definitely true. One of the other questions was, what about a delayed return? You know, I think in late June, July, there was a whole conversation about delayed return when all the numbers were coming out. We had as Emer said, Dr. Farrell said, we had the conversations with the county health officials, and they're saying, boy, maybe the progress we're making as a county, we're starting to see the numbers go down. We might actually be able to get this by August, maybe a little bit later. That's when a delayed return was sort of in a conversation. Now with the way the numbers are and with the governor's mandates of what it takes to return, I think it would be very tough. We would end up having to make those days up sometime during the school year as well. So we want to create a plan where we have enough time for professional development. So our teachers and our staff, our clerical staff, everybody feels comfortable with what the plan is, and using that first week of school to get things out like computers and work on the platforms the students will be learning, connecting with families, connecting with students that we always do during those times. So I think those are all going to be real important concepts as we move forward. Not that any of that is out. We were kind of wondering what the governor was going to say on Friday, and there were some people who were thinking maybe he's going to say you guys aren't starting school until mid-September or something of that sort. That wasn't one of the mandates that he did come out with. But for right now, what's next? The ongoing communication. We're going to have a parent virtual town hall tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. For the parents to kind of give them an idea of where we're at, and hopefully be able to answer some of their questions through the presentation as well. Next week, there'll be a town hall for special education. I think I already discussed that there's some meetings with faculty senate that are going on this week that Dwayne's team have set up. And we're going to have additional updates and virtual meetings, because I think we're going to end up needing some virtual meetings with elementary teachers, then with secondary teachers, and school sites are going to need them to do with their teams. So we're going to be able to try to do that. And I realize people are trying to get away, probably people trying to have a little bit of vacation or anything of that sort, but we'll set those meetings up, and hopefully as many people can attend, we'll do so. As I mentioned, pre-institute week, we're scraping it back. We're just saying, we need 5 days, we realize, for staff to get up to speed. Already seeing, there's a lot of teachers that are already planning their curriculum and those types of things, which we understand every teacher does during the summer, revisits the curriculum and those things. If you can understand, we are trying to duplicate, we're required to duplicate in-person instruction as much as we can, as closely as we can. I hope that's not restart my computer, but as closely as we can. And so really looking at the curriculum, it's going to be about the delivery. How do we deliver the curriculum while maintaining the curriculum that we need to have students learn and master? Right now, school still is planning on starting August 17th, and what that first week will look like. My son, who's going to miss the no backpack day, one of the things he told me yesterday is, does that mean we're not going to have no backpack day? That's the time you get to know the other kids and just get to know your teachers. We've got to treat that first week the same way. We've got to be able to build in some of those things where we do have an opportunity for the kids to connect with teachers, just like teachers want to connect with students, and for the clerical staff to get inundated with staff, and how are we going to work through all those issues. So we just have to make sure that's still in our plans, because that is part of that social emotional piece that we've heard from so many staff and parents that they've missed. And then agility seems to be the word, pivoting is the word. We got a lot of words, but we know that what we're planning for on July 21st is what we're planning for on July 21st. What we were planning for 10 days earlier wasn't what we have in plan for right now. And so we've got to continue to plan for August 17th, and then have the agility to kind of move in a direction. If the state gives us something different, if the county health department gives us something different, we've got to be able to move to that. But I think what you're realizing is that when we do get to return students to school, every teacher is going to have this online training and this online experience to deliver online instruction in case we ever do have to go backwards, which we hope that never happens. But every district is preparing for that. It's part of our plan that we have to prepare for that. So I think that's all for me. I'm going to pass it back to Kelly. And Kelly, if there's anything I didn't cover, I need to cover, please just let me know.
Great, thank you very much, Norm. I've stopped my screen share with the presentation, and we're just going to bring it back for a few minutes of answering some of these questions that have been coming in through our comment section on our YouTube channel. And one of the things as we opened this meeting was trying to cover those questions. A lot of them were woven in real time as we were responding for each of the presenters. One comment before we start handling some of these others, and several of you have agreed to answer some of these questions, is to recognize that a lot of questions that people have stemmed from our return to campus plan that was launched last week, that spoke to what does a day on campus with all of our students look like. And so there were lots of questions that came in about that. And we recognize, to the point of that agility work that we've been using, we may need to revisit what that looks like by the time Fresno County gets off the watch list. When you were listening to Michael Johnston's explanation of what that watch list requirement looks like, we recognize that it's unlikely to change dramatically in the next couple of days or weeks. And so the questions that have come in related to on campus, who's going to enforce, PPE use on students and staff and things like that, we'll be addressing those later on as we get closer to what does that really look like in the conditions that we're living in at the time that Fresno County moves off that list or gets closer to moving off that list. But we do have some other questions as well, in addition to the frequently asked question document that we'll post after this in the next 48 hours or so. So I'm going to ask Barry, because this question came in from some of our employees about testing. Can Clovis Unified be a testing center, or does MyCare provide testing for employees? How available is MyCare to all of our employees, even those who aren't currently receiving health benefits from Clovis Unified? So Mr. Jager, you might be able to take that one.
Thanks, Kelly. And again, thank you everybody for hanging in there. We want to continue this dialogue. And if your question is not answered, know that that is our goal as we continue to work with our employees. Quickly, I did ask, and we've been working with our benefits team, and thank you tremendously to our benefits team, as we have been, leaving no stone unturned in regards to our benefit employees' safety, our employee safety in general. The answer to that is we are currently looking into possibilities to offer on-site COVID-19 testing. Our health center currently does not, but we are taking care of making sure that our employees are covered through our benefits plan for COVID testing. One of the items that was shared to me is that more information is coming, and we have also found out that we have identified all of the testing sites in the Fresno County area. So our benefits team, their phone is nonstop, their email is nonstop. I can't thank them enough. Ironically, they're very near and dear to human resources, so they're right across the hallway, but they will answer all phone calls. We are looking at ways to support our employees. Michael Johnston and I were working with Shereen Crosby last Thursday to identify that exact topic right now in regards to our employees in general and our benefited employees. One of the items that will be coming shortly is Shereen and team have crafted an email that will go out to our benefited employees and to inform them of our staff, letting them know what their testing options are and where they can go. And so that will support and look to get information into our employees via email.
Thank
a couple
you.
of other questions that were asked. I don't know, Kelly, if you're going to ask me, I do have, but a question was asked about leaves. If an employee does opt to take a leave, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act leave, or a leave in general, is their work compromised or their job compromised? Absolutely not. We have continually had our employees utilize leaves for a variety of reasons: medical situations, personal situations, situations that we aren't revealed because of HIPAA, but it will not compromise an employee's job status within Clovis Unified, certificated and classified.
Great, thanks, Barry. One other question that came up was about the August 10th return to campus for a lot of our classified staff. I think earlier in the presentation you heard that there is that expectation beyond what you mentioned on the remote working option that staff members are. I know the California Department of Public Health actually spoke to that yesterday in a webinar that they offered through the California Department of Education, that while the student component has kind of been taken out of the equation of on-campus instruction, that they were speaking directly to teachers working in classrooms, staff on campuses, and saying that with the safety precautions in place, that was allowable in these circumstances. But could you add anything to that, or was there anything else from the work that your
Yeah,
team
let me
has
add
been
to that.
doing.
And also just to recap on the COVID testing, our employees have already been able to access away from the health center through Quest. And so again, our employees have had that available to them, and it's just not through our health center, but it is available through Quest, where they are able to have that particular test if they so choose. And so just to reiterate that. Also asked if they being the employees are needing to be in person on 8/10. A couple of probably layered responses to that is, if there is an employee that chooses to utilize or need the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, they would not be in person. If we are utilizing opportunities to identify those that do identify as at risk by age or medical condition, and they are opting to work remotely, which is away from the site, and utilize, online Zoom opportunities as we are today, they would not be required to work on site. The other is, as we follow the guidelines, as I stated earlier in our Zoom from the Department of Public Health and CDC, we are complying with large group gatherings, which would not have people in situations that would compromise 6-foot social distancing and large group gatherings of size that has been identified to us. And so there may be those that would work in classrooms or in settings on site, but there would be the options made available to our employees if they so chose or needed to access leaves or work remotely. So again, that's a layered response, but it's ultimately to make sure that our employees know that it is available to them, that we would not compromise the health and well-being if those particular matters came into place. And I know that we are working right now with school leadership and identifying what pre-institute week looks like. How much of that will be, virtual? How much will we make sure that we are not compromising the guidelines set in front of us? Because those are all questions that we are, working to answer, and making sure that, the well-being of every employee, both certificated and classified, continues to be at the forefront of our decision making. We were in a meeting this morning, and that is exactly a topic that was brought up as we're ready for, charge, general session, institute week, all of the normal that we are, I'll say it for myself, but that we have, we desire come the first part of August, as many employees do as well. But those things are changing because we are monitoring and making sure that we are following all of those guidelines.
All right, thank you, Barry. So what I heard you say, just to repeat, is that the testing that's available is available through our medical benefits, but also for anyone who needs testing, there's availability of that through the medical community. And so there is free testing available to people, oftentimes just by contacting a healthcare provider.
Correct.
Okay, and then the other clarification, as we alluded to that slide earlier, that right now the question of, do I just get to express a preference as to whether working remotely or working on site? That the guidance that CUSD is following is the guidance of the Centers for Disease Control, and their at-risk or possibly at-risk criteria, which is available on the CDC website. And so anyone interested or questioning, what those health categories are, can check them out on CDC's website, and then certainly contact HR for questions or clarification.
For clarification and for the appropriate, policy and agreement moving forward to support remote working.
All right, great. And then the next question is for Corinne. Yeah, I know several questions came in on CTE programs and CART. That was a big question. We want to start there, and then I have a few others that came in that also were in your category.
All right, yes. So those are the details that I realize, when you get done with something, you go, gosh, I should have mentioned that. So you're right. CTE, that's one of the reasons for the longer blocks. And since everybody's online, we are going to have to work with our CTE teachers and CINA on some ways that we might be more creative in the instruction for some of our CTE courses that might have a lot of hands-on. And so that's some stuff that we're going to work through, but CTE is still going to be in the schedule for students to access. And same for CART. CART's working with 2 different districts, and I know that we have had quite a few conversations with Dr. Watson over there to discuss, and he does believe he can accommodate our schedules with the online version. And I think that might take me, Kelly, just to lead in, is that I think some questions might be that the template of a draft schedule that I showed would be how the whole year would look. Like even if we came back face to face, and that is not necessarily the case. Should we return students to on-site instruction? I would imagine at secondary levels that they would go back to what their schedule frame and typical pattern of schedule, because it looks different at each of our sites, would look like, but that this would give a little bit of that structure so that students have access to all of their teachers. There's some set times and that regular routine. And so just wanted to clarify that as well.
Great, thank you. I know that there was another question, and I'm just going to kind of reiterate what I heard you saying in regard to the teachers who have young children themselves who are going to be in this distance learning role and are struggling with, how do I take care of my student who, you know, I have a little and I'm teaching high school students, how is that going to look? And that's something we don't have an answer for today, but it's absolutely in progress of finding out if there are options that we can look at as an employer for all of our employees who might be struggling with that. We're looking at private industry and some of the things that they're doing to help answer that particular need. So while we can't give a reassurance or an answer today of what that's going to look like, what I heard you say was it's absolutely top of mind, and we're looking at a couple of different options that we'd be sharing with employees as soon as we can flesh out the details.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. I think we've heard from all of our staff that this is a concern when they're working and their students don't have maybe the daily routine that they would have with supervision. And so we definitely recognize that there's a need, and for that to be as timely as we can make it for planning purposes for our staffs, and a little bit of that stress I talked about too that everyone feels. But there are a lot of nuances that come with that when we look at facilities and ways that we can provide that. And so we will, like I said, we're going to consider options and feasibility and work to get that information out as soon as possible.
Great, thank you, Corinne. My next question is for Robin, I believe, if you, Dr. Castillo. There was a question about our instructional aides. I know that so much of their work is very unique and customized, but in particular, I think to our special education aides, is there an option for delivering instruction or assistance to families in the private home environment of the family? Is that something that we have thought about for our special ed community? And maybe it's premature to next week's meeting, but.
Something that we've talked about and that we've looked at. One thing to keep into consideration is when we're working on our own school site, we could control the conditions. So there's some unique things that we have to look at when we're asking somebody to step into someone's private home, where things might not look the same or the conditions might not be the same as we would create in the school environment. But that is definitely something that we can look at and clarify.
Great, all right, thank you. Another question came up regarding our facilities. So Michael Johnston, maybe you can also ask, I know I've seen some things in the news about HVAC systems and that there's, you know, some information or some data that says maybe they can spread through that. I know people talk about airlines and the recirculated air, but I also know our facility guys are pretty on top of our indoor air quality all the time. Can you speak to what we have found about our indoor air quality system and how our air is circulated?
Obviously, this is something that our team's definitely looking at as we continue to look at the situation with COVID-19. We have, you know, as far as our HVAC units, we are using the best filtration systems we possibly can on those units. And obviously, you know, we continue to investigate what other options there are out there for us to make sure there's no concerns. I think as we look at social distancing and the reality too of you know, sometime before we will bring kids back based off the new data and the parameters, because those parameters are going to be, it's going to be a while before we can bring kids back to campus based off the parameters set by the watch list for Fresno County. So by that time, you know, the reality of the needs, the higher needs for as many kids as we're going to have on campus, when no doubt in my mind, the circulation of the campus is at this point, with kids not coming back, is not even close to an issue for us as far as our HVAC units. They will filter the air sufficiently for that limited number of staff that will be on campus.
Great. All right. Thanks, Michael. I know that's been a concern, and I know our facility folks have really been leaning into that. We have just a few more questions. We're coming up on 4:30, so we recognize that time is precious, and many of our employees have taken time out of even their time off work to participate. So we're going to answer just a couple more. And then I did want to reiterate, I know that, you know, this presentation and being the person that often sends communication out to our employees, you know, there might have been some typos on this PowerPoint. And I just want to reiterate that that was because this is a very much a dynamic, real presentation that is based on in part the 250 questions that we received since I sent that email out yesterday asking for input from great conversations that we've had with Faculty Senate over the last couple of days and meetings that they had. We got over 300 questions from that group as well. And so really what you're hearing today is very much driven by the questions that we've been asked by you. And so again, from my perspective, it's that, oh, this wasn't exactly the greatest of PowerPoint presentations I've ever put together for people. And I know some of the questions that we had hoped to have answers for, we're still in progress on, but I just wanted to make sure and kind of clarify that for all of our employees who are watching, that this is very much a dynamic process. And so your questions, your comments, the questions that my team's been processing and texting to me throughout this past hour and a half, coming from the YouTube comments and texts that they have been receiving, are very much an effort to respond to those questions, because we recognize that there is a lot of anxiety. As Mr. Anderson mentioned, you know, we're parents ourselves. I have a son who went to CART last year, and I know that CART question is on the minds of a lot of his friends and families that we know as well. And the question of how we're going to handle, you know, that child care component for families who are parents themselves, as well as dedicated teachers and educators and clerical staff for our schools. So that is all very much coming together as real time almost, and we'll keep this dialogue going both through virtual town halls in the future and through published information on our website, and those emails that I have to say, you're probably all sick of seeing my name on your inbox, but we try very hard, the whole team generates those in it as a result. So before I pose this last question to Dr. O'Farrell, or the second to last question, Corinne, if I could put you back on the spot briefly. I know we also had a couple of questions come in about trans K to second grade teachers who deal with just the very, very young students who their technology skills are just developing. Can you speak to maybe how that's going to look for some of our teachers, or things that we're looking at as far as resourcing them?
Yeah, you know, I don't have all the nuanced details of that, but I think that it's safe to recognize that we're going to need to accommodate to where our students are at. And when we talk about trans K students, they are probably not going to be able to stay on a Zoom for very long, much less have the entire class on a Zoom. So I do think that, you know, we'll work with different grade levels as appropriate to maybe have small groups. I heard stories about how Zoom went for some kindergarten teachers in the spring, and lots of movement and lots of noise, and everybody wants to volunteer. And so I definitely want to give teachers, you know, I think there's going to be that freedom built in as they work with their PLCs and their principals to have those smaller groups, to provide that instruction that's needed, that's age appropriate for the duration. I also say, while we're delivering daily online instruction for new instruction, there's still going to be those components that are built in that are individual practice. And that might be through the Google Classroom, like I talked about, or junior high has Study Sync and a lot of these other things. So that the teachers are still going to be driving the instruction and the curriculum in those, but they are going to meet with their students and deliver new instruction daily. But no, that's a great question. I think another one I forgot too is with secondary levels is sometimes we have 0 periods or 8 periods. Well, that wasn't in my template of a frame to wrap our mind around. We will still have those. Those don't disappear for kids, but trying to figure out what those might look like, but they'll be in a schedule as well.
Great, thank you. All right, Robin, I'm going to put you on the spot this time. This is kind of fun, actually. I can get used to it. It's a little bit like one of the game shows. If I'm a teacher today, August 17th is right around the corner, what should I be doing to prepare? I think a lot of our teachers are asking that. You know, I'm used to going in and decorating my classroom and getting organized. What should our teachers be doing right now to be ready for that August 17th date?
I think a lot of it will start with the things that you normally do, keeping in mind, what is it that are my essential standards that I want to make sure that kids really own in order to be prepared to the next step. I think what's challenging right now is knowing that kids are going to be coming in with some gaps from the spring, and what maybe do I need to do as far as diagnosing where students are to identify gaps. So I think that'll be an important step. I think some of the things to think about is I'm going to be delivering instruction in a different way. So how might I do that, and what technology would I use? Thinking about, what might I need to be trained in to better do that? There's different levels of comfort of feeling comfortable videoing a lesson, and do I know how to do that using my dot cam as opposed to having my face on the screen? So thinking about how things would be delivered, because as the options for trainings come out, I think thinking about where do I really need to put my own personal focus so I personally feel ready for what I need to do. But as far as using textbooks and curriculum, just like in the normal school year where a teacher identifies the best way to teach something that fits their style and their students, that would remain the same. And so, your textbook usage is the same. I think it would be a time that you could prepare to see what online resources come with the textbook that maybe you haven't previously tapped into. There's great lists from Curriculum and Instruction that list those things. So those would be a great thing to take a look at and explore, and just see what's there that, in a normal setting you might not use, but in this one would be more practical.
Thank you, Robin. I think at this point we've again gone a little past 4:30, so I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Dr. O'Farrell for a final word. And really the last question I think we've received a few of throughout the course of this presentation is, so what happens when Fresno is off that watch list? How quickly are we expecting that we would pivot, to use that word again, back to a full instructional model? Are we going to be looking at another 48-hour window, after a work day like what happened in March, or are we going to be easing into that? Is that something we can answer right now? If you want to speak to that as we get ready to close out.
I'd be happy to speak to that, Kelly. As you can imagine, from what I shared earlier, our entire community will want us to be prepared once we're off the watch list to be able to return our kids to school. I know our teachers who want to be in their classrooms will want that, and I know that our governing board are going to want us to be prepared. So in terms of being prepared, we've already started that. One of the things that we're doing right now is asking all of our parents when they're registering their children on our annual information update to identify whether they will want, once we're off the watch list, whether they will want us to return to their child to a 5-day traditional setting, or whether they're going to want to, for a variety of reasons pertaining to them, want to avail of an ongoing online option. And so another thing that we will be doing now in the next few weeks is identifying which teachers equally will want to, for a variety of reasons, be avail of staying online once that pivot takes place. And as you can imagine, disruption is something we're trying to minimize for our children and our teachers. It's best for everybody to have as much stability as possible. So if we can identify the teachers who are going to opt for an online choice for the entire year, we will try to match them up with the students who equally are opting for that. And that way, if, for example, we're changing mid-year, our children and our teachers will, the disruption to their stability will be minimized. So hopefully, that's what we're doing. We're preparing now. The question is, what will the turnaround be? We will do it as quickly as possible. I know in a meeting this morning that Michael Johnston mentioned that, we will have quite a bit of legwork to do with our transportation department. So it's not just going to happen overnight, but I would say we will for sure have all the groundwork in place so that we can do that pivot as efficiently as possible. Aim number 2, operation with increased efficiency. So that would be our goal.
All right. Well, as we get ready to close, I do want to thank again all of our panelists who stepped up and were willing to flexibly answer questions and go through information and really, as new information comes out of Sacramento, to revisit, readjust, reevaluate, study, analyze, ask for clarification from Sacramento and all of those things that it takes to be able to get the answers. I know that everyone would love to have every single question that was asked today super specifically hand delivered with their name on it as to how it looks for moving forward, and do know that that's what we're working toward, but it is a process and a process that is adjusted regularly. So as we leave, Dwayne Gowdy, I know that you wanted to also say something real quickly, so I'm going to let you have the microphone briefly.
Hello, everybody. I just want to let you know, as Kelly just said,
I'm going to stop because we can't hear Dwayne. So I'm thinking that maybe there is audio on your computer real quickly that might need to be unmuted.
I was hearing him, Kelly. I don't know. I heard him.
Okay. I just saw his mouth move, but I will listen.
Okay. And
now I can.
As we finish this up, as Kelly stated, there are thousands of questions out there, thousands of questions from all our employees. We couldn't get them all in tonight. Remember, this is an all employee meeting, presentation. The Faculty Senate has meetings scheduled for tomorrow afternoon with our senators, also Wednesday afternoon. I would also like to propose, I'd actually like to do some town hall meetings with our sites by area, or maybe by area we have some town hall meetings. The more we communicate, the more we ask, the better off we'll all be as a team. Once again, though, it is very difficult to answer everybody's questions. There are thousands of them. We're going to do everything we can. We have lists, we have the questions, we know the concerns. Feel free to email me. It might not be till 3, 4, 5 in the morning that I answer them, because there have been quite a few. I want you to know that we're all here. I'm here, Faculty Senate's here, CSEA, Cubs administration. We're here to move forward with the mandate we've been given, with the safety precautions and beyond, more than what we've been given, to make sure that we're all safe and our students are safe. It's tough times. We've never had this before. I know we've heard that over and over again. We're going to move forward. We need to move forward as a team. Have a great evening, and be expecting to have more meetings and more conversations. Guys, have a great evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Dwayne, and thanks again to all of our panelists, Tim, Michelle, for joining us, Dr. O'Farrell, Barry, Amy, Corinne, Norm, Lisa, Michael, and Robin. And to all of our employees, we will see you soon, whether that's virtually or passing masked in the hallway. Have a good night.